Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Sports on the Positive Tip. This is Kenny along with Kenny Squared, and we are back the day after Christmas. Kenny, the New York Knicks are now 20 and 10, 10 games over 500 after a thrilling win yesterday over Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs. Are you getting pumped up about where this season is going?
Yeah, but I don't know if I could put much stock into dunking over Goofy or anything. But yeah, no, I think their season's starting out really nicely.
Yeah. So you're talking about the alternate cast there, which actually I have to say is very, very well done.
Yeah, it is cool, and like I like that technology is there.
Yeah.
And I know like they're totally catering to the kids and
Oh yeah.
more power to them.
They need to. We're gonna get into the NBA first here. They need to cater to the kids. So I've narrowed it down this way. We'll talk a little bit more when we get to hot stove. I think if there is one dumb owner with Pete Alonso that may really, really overpay him, it'll either be the Angels, the Texas Rangers, or the San Francisco Giants. You have anybody to add to that?
I can definitely see the Giants. I think the Rangers didn't they signed Jock Peterson, so I don't know if they would add him.
Well,
But
they don't have a real first baseman right now, right? Because they traded Nathaniel Lowe. Uh,
yeah.
and they've made splashes every year. I mean, they got Jake Berger that they could put at first base, who's a very good player. He's not as good as Pete Alonso, but he's very good. And they re-signed Evaldi, but they typically make a splash, right? With Simeon, Seager, Jacob deGrom. So I'm surprised they really haven't made a big splash just yet.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. We'll see. I'm hoping the road though leads back to the Mets. Um, Kenny, I watched the first episode of the Aaron Rodgers, don't laugh at me, of the Aaron Rodgers docuseries, Enigma. And we could talk a little bit more about it when we get to the NFL. I have a deeper appreciation of him and a little bit more of an understanding of him after watching the first episode. And I know it's going to be tough for you to watch series. It's not that long. It's only three episodes, but um, it is enlightening. The stuff that he's been through, I didn't realize. Some of the things he went through, I didn't realize. So if I told you that my opinion is changing on Aaron Rodgers, my opinion will never change on him as a football player. One of the best of all time, right? This has been the most disappointing Jets season that I remember, but I also think he is a diva and everything like that. But I'm starting to feel like there are some reasons why he's like that. So don't hate on me if my opinion changes just a little bit.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. I do think that sometimes he brings some of it on himself,
Yeah,
but I think he also is a very easy target for anything he says
yeah,
in the media.
yeah, yeah. Well, the first episode ended with is talking about the vaccination, and so that's how the second one is gonna. I'm gonna watch it later this afternoon. That's how the second one is starting. So that he totally brought on all himself. Nobody would have cared if he had said, "Hey, I'm not vaccinated." You know what I mean? But then to kind of say that you're inoculated or whatever language you use, and then to say no, he really wasn't. That's an example of what you just said, right? He brought all that on himself. That was nobody. All right, you ready to get this going? We got a lot to get into.
Let's get into it.
All right. This episode of Sports on the Positive Tip is brought to you by the Tavern Coffee House. Attention, coffee lovers! Are you craving the perfect cup of coffee to start your day? Well, look no further than the Tavern Coffee House. It's located at 12302 Buckeye Road in Cleveland, Ohio. You can also check them out and order your coffee at thetaverncoffee.com. Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny and
Kenny squared.
with the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. Kenny, this is the day after Christmas. Merry Christmas to everyone out there. Merry Christmas to you and your family. I know you guys had a great day yesterday. A lot of fun, a little Sonic 3 action there. And so I watched a good chunk of the Nick game, not the whole thing from beginning to end. In and out of the other games, I didn't see any of the late games, but in and out of Dallas and Minnesota. and in and out of the Sixers and Boston, and all five games were pretty competitive. Did you get to watch any of them?
I watched a little bit of the Spurs Knicks. I did like the alternate cast. What is it called? Dunk the Halls or whatever they called it.
Go Halls, yeah.
Um, I just think it was interesting. Um, Mikal Bridges though, I feel like that's kind of his first like
Yeah,
actual Nick moment. I don't know.
I agree. He's played really well in December. He started off slow, and part of it is, he was used to the last couple of years being the number one option. Um, and he was sort of like even the number one option in Phoenix when that team went to the finals. And so, having to adjust here, I think we could give him a little bit of slack, but he played a great game yesterday. Wembayama, he loves playing against the Knicks. He killed them last year and he really lit them up yesterday. It was a little bit of a coming out party, I think, for both of them yesterday. But we wanted to get into the NBA and their shrinking audience. And I think you and I kind of started this conversation over text because of the All-Star game. And then we started talking about some of the other things, how the ratings are really down, but yet this is coinciding with these historic deals that they signed with NBC and with Amazon to pretty much spotlight the NBA every night of the week with a national game or two, and most nights. And NBC will be moving right from Sunday night football right into Sunday night basketball, Sunday night NBA, which I was kind of excited about. But I think all of us are a little down on the NBA. I asked you last week, had you sat, start to finish, and I know, your circumstances are different with your two little ones, but as a teen, you used to sit with me and we would watch a random game, from beginning to end on a random Thursday night, a TNT game. And you said you didn't. And I think that, Michael Wilbon said that a lot of the younger guys are now just watching the highlights. Let me just say this real quick, and then I want to hear from you. Let me just give some stats here real quick, and because yesterday was really interesting. You had the two NFL games on for the first time on Netflix, right? And actually, two very good matchups, but both the games turned out to be blowouts, right? You had Chiefs Steelers, which you'd say, man, that's going to be a great game. It really wasn't. The Chiefs did a great job. And then you had Baltimore and Houston. And as you said last week, there's something off with Houston. They got just killed by the Ravens. But Netflix is not releasing the numbers totally just yet. The only thing that they said, right? Because this is the first time that the NFL, with the exception of when Christmas is falling on a Sunday, like I think it did last year, where they have intentionally now gone after the NBA or gone after the audience on Christmas Day. And they've got this deal with Netflix, by the way, for the next couple of years through 2026. So we'll see this again next year. Um, but Netflix has, here's the only information they're releasing, but you have to look up the other. They have over 282 subscribers. Netflix does. Probably a lot more watchers. I know they cracked down on the different people logging in or whatever, but 282 million subscribers. What they will say is they're saying about one third of their subscribers watched the football games yesterday. And of course, they're saying it rose towards halftime of the Ravens Houston game because of the Beyonce concert, right? So if you take 282 million, one third of that is about 93 million people worldwide. And now that's a key thing because the NFL, really wants that worldwide audience, worldwide watch those two games. Now, let's go back to the NBA is not releasing their ratings just yet yesterday, except to say those were five great games. Again, I didn't watch. I was in and out. I just said that only the Knicks and Spurs I watched most of. But if you go back to last year, the top rated game of last year was Lakers Celtics, right? That was in prime time, and there were a little bit more than 5 million viewers for Lakers Celtics, which at the time you would think is pretty good. So we could go either way, right? We could say that the ratings are going to come out, and for NBA, it was a little bit down. If we stay with the pattern of how it's been so far this year, right, when they're down about 20 some odd percent, or we could say maybe they're up 20 some odd percent. Either way you slice it, the NFL crushed them yesterday. And
Oh
again,
yeah.
I want to say this, and I'm turning it over to you. You had the Knicks and the Spurs. You had the budding star and Wembanyama in the first game. You had a great matchup in the second game with, again, you've got four stars, let's say. You could say five with Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, Anthony Edwards, one of the other faces of the leagues in that game. And Doncic, I know he got hurt, but you had him and Kyrie Irving went for 39 points, right? And it's a close game throughout. Well, it was a close game, and then Dallas almost beat them in the fourth quarter. Sixers, you've got the defending champs against you've got the Sixers and Celtics. Celtics obviously defending champs. Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, Tyrese Maxey leads them to a win, 33 points. I don't think Joel Embiid even played, but that's a whole other story. Then, of course, you've got the Lakers Warriors, which the Lakers won by 1 point. It was supposedly, I didn't get to see any of that. Supposedly, it was a great game. Curry goes off for 38 points. LeBron gets 31 points, and the Lakers win by one. And then late night, you had Denver at Phoenix. Both teams have been mediocre so far this year, but the Suns rise up and they win. Kevin Durant has a great game. So by all accounts, those should be highly watched games, right? Of the NBA. And maybe they were, but the NFL crushed them. It didn't even come close. It's not going to come close, I don't think, when you put together the final numbers. So what does the NBA do here, Kenny?
Well, pause on the Lakers Warriors game. Check out the highlights when you get a chance because um Steph Curry had like a vintage Steph Curry
Hmm.
moments in like the last minute. And the Lakers won it on a layup by Austin Reeves
Yeah.
with 1 second left. It
Wow.
wild ending.
Wow.
Um yeah, well, I think it's important to say one thing first. At this point and at this juncture, nothing's beaten football. Um Baseball is on the rise, and I'll get to why I think that is in a second. Um Hockey is just kind of there. No one's going to trump the NFL as of right now. Now, if their product starts to become a little bit feeling like it's canned, if people already kind of accuse the NFL of being rigged anyway, if
Hmm.
it kind of gives that bigger perception, then it's going down the toilet. But so, but I think when you look at the NBA and how their ratings, they said from last year, a lot of the ratings on average have declined about 20%. And I think it's a few different reasons. And then I'll kind of give what I would say they should do about it. First, we talked a little bit about the 3 point issue. Um, the Warriors 2016-17 Warriors would rank like 30th, I think it was, in 3 point attempts. And they were like the most high powered offensive team, I think, in the last decade, I think we
Yeah.
could easily say.
Easily. Yeah.
Um, so I think that's one issue. Um, the second is the load management. I mean, you said it, Joel Embiid didn't play. How many times do all these guys just not play?
Yeah.
And I know even like in baseball, it's rare a guy plays 162 games. But usually, if you're talking one of the stars of the league, there's about a 9 out of 10 chance that he'll play. But also, you kind of understand that. But some of these guys aren't even playing like Joel Embiid isn't going to make the 65 game threshold.
No.
So even if he has a monster rest of the year, he can't be MVP. Um, so that needs to be fixed because also when you look at it from a ratings perspective, let's say you're tuning into a random Golden State Lakers game and then you find out LeBron James isn't playing and Steph Curry isn't playing.
Yeah.
The second that you see that, the second that Mike Breen says that on the broadcast, you're like, well, I'm not watching this game.
Right.
And we're talking casual fans. We're not talking about the people that
Right.
the diehards that watch every minute of every game.
Right.
The other thing on the 3 point is just to kind of backtrack a sec. So often games can be done in like 10 minutes, and like that will decrease the watchability. Um, I'd said before the only game that I saw in like from start to finish that wasn't a Knicks game was the Cavs Warriors at the beginning of the year. And that's because I was there. If I was watching it, that game was over in like 5 minutes.
Mm,
Um, so that's another thing with the 3 point. I think the other like major issues is there really isn't a big rivalry. Now we had mentioned Christmas, the Christmas games. Um, I remember in years past where the Christmas game was like the premier rivalry matchup. Like we had mentioned, I think last week, the Shaq and Kobe Heat against the Lakers.
oh, yeah,
Um, I
yeah,
think of the Cavs and the Warriors playing.
yeah,
Like that was the first time that they would play every single year after the finals. But there isn't like that. There isn't that game that will get people there. Like
yeah,
even right now, I don't know what that matchup would be.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
even like you look at the finals matchup from last year, Celtics Mavs doesn't really seem like a fun marquee type of matchup.
Rivalry.
So
Yeah,
yeah, like I think that we're missing like that rivalry. I think also with that we're missing that dynasty. The NBA does better with dynasties. I know sometimes that's really hard to hear, and I don't know, that might be really hard to see in the future because they've done they've kind of created the CBA in a way that it's really hard to have a super team because of the new luxury tax threshold, similar to baseball, but it's like worse.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's why like a guy like Karl Anthony Towns got traded. You need a guy like Jalen Brunson to be willing to take a giant pay cut from the max deal in order to make it happen.
Hmm.
Um, so like, but when you look at like the peak of the NBA over the last several decades, you think of like the Shaq and Kobe Lakers, the Tim Duncan Spurs, the Wade Bosch, uh, LeBron Heat,
Yeah.
the Steph, Draymond, Clay Warriors. Like the NBA really does well with dynasties, but now we're 6 years removed from a repeat champion. So I think that's going to be something also that really hurts. And last thing, there's not a face in the league. Um,
Hmm.
like there's a lot of really good players, but like the people, like if you were to ask casual people, like who give me an NBA player, they're probably going to say LeBron James, Steph Curry, or Kevin Durant. And
Right.
that's a problem because in the next 5 years, probably all three of those guys aren't going to be playing in the NBA anymore.
Right.
Um, and I don't know if it's just because all of the best players are international or not, because easily like the top three players, Jokic, Luka, Giannis, definitely all international.
Yeah.
Um, but even some of the other good young American players, they don't really have that like I don't want to say likability, but like they're not the ones that draw people to the stands. People were really hoping that would be Zion, and I
Yeah.
think if he continued on that trajectory that he had in college, he would have been. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so what does the NBA do? I think number one, they need to figure out the 3 point. Um, Baseball did a lot of drastic measures over these last few years, and they've all paid off. Whether
No
you're
doubt.
talking the pitch clock, whether you're talking the shift, the 3 point, like analytically, it makes sense, but the watchability doesn't hurt. It doesn't help. And in baseball, that's the same with the shift. Like analytically, yeah, it makes sense if David Ortiz is grounding everything to the right side, that you have as many players on the right side as possible. But it hurts the product overall.
Yeah, we
And
hate it.
after all,
Yeah.
like it just so I think they need to figure out something drastic. I don't know what it looks like, but I think you got to change something. You got to make it a little bit harder to do that. Load management, that's going to be hard to fix. I think I like what they've tried to do with the NBA Cup. Um, the only thing I would add is making it an incentive, well, two incentives in one. Um, you automatically get a lottery pick. That way, whether you're a good or bad team, you're going to get a premier college player. And then number two, you automatically make the playoffs if you win the NBA Cup.
Or you,
I think
first
that's a
round
fair,
buy or something like that. Yeah.
yeah. Like you're
Yeah.
automatically like a top seed. I also heard someone say that you get an extra win on your season, which I think that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I think load management's really hard to fix because you got to, it's hard to motivate people that aren't motivated to play.
Yeah.
Um, as far as the dynasty thing, I think the biggest thing that they have to look at is how like the NBA really needs to get a repeat champion. And you can't really make that happen.
Right.
Really,
That happened organically. Yeah.
what would really save the NBA right now, and this is gonna be as biased as possible, but not really, if the Knicks won 3 out of the next 5 championships.
Oh
Because
yeah.
everyone would hate the Knicks and Knicks fans would come out in droves.
Hmm.
So but they need a dynasty.
Yeah.
Like that's part of the reason why the NFL is so popular. The Chiefs could end up like 16-1 at the end of the season and be going for a three-peat. That's why they're so popular.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to your point, a lot of people were rooting for them, and there's going to be a lot of people rooting against them, to
Yeah.
beat the Chiefs. Yeah, I don't have much to add to your points. I wanted to throw off. You made some great points, and really, when I think about that Golden State team, Kenny, one of the great things is that they did. You had the Splash Brothers, right? And so it was sexy almost to hitting those 3 pointers the way Curry and Thompson did. But that team, if I remember right, they played excellent defense, and it's not that long ago, so I'm sure I remember this. They played excellent defense, but they also ran when they needed to run. Like, how many times you and I would watch a game and they'd be down by like 15, and within like a couple of minutes the lead was erased, and not just because of 3 pointers. They were outstanding on the fast break, which made the 80s, the Magic Johnson Laker teams, James Worthy, Kareem so much fun to watch because Showtime because they ran fast breaks and you know so I do think that there's a lot to be said there. Let me just throw off. I just randomly wrote down before the show some of the younger guys. Now you mentioned Curry, Durant, James. I'll throw Kyrie Irving in there as guys that are on the. I mean, they're still playing extremely well at that high level, right? I don't want to take anything away from, especially what LeBron is doing at his age. But realistically, they're not going to be around in the next 5 years. You're right. Um, so you got these guys coming up. How about the guy in Orlando? How many folks know what a great player he is? I know he's hurt right now, Boncaro. Um, okay, I remember him at Kansas, some people may say, right? When they went to the championship game and won. But I mean, the guy is unbelievable. John Morant. You and I have spent a lot of time talking about Ja, who may rise back up as the face of the NBA. I thought he was in that trajectory because I saw a commercial with him the other day, and I'm like, okay, Nike's back in with him. Um, but he certainly, if he, I hate to say this because he's a grown man, but if he behaves off the court and he sets a good example for the young kids, he has the look and the appearance with the dreadlocks and everything. And he's such a great player. And Memphis is now playing good. Now, it's a small market, right? Memphis. I saw just the most wonderful layup by Anthony Edwards yesterday with less than a minute to go. He just said, I'm taking the ball, I'm going to the basket, and somebody, let me see if somebody can stop me. And they didn't. I mean, he's just a wonderful player if you watch him, and night in and night out, especially. But I'm not so sure it's working with him and Julius Randle yet. But um, no, there's a lot of commercials with him. He's sort of become a little bit of the face of the league. I think Giannis is right in that middle, right? Giannis is still young enough, but he's been around for a long time now. He's been an MVP, won a championship. Um, can he still be the face of the league? I don't know. And then you look at, the players that are foreign, but you forget almost that they're foreign players with Luka Doncic, and Luka's still very young. Um, the Joker, 3-time MVP. But I mean, how many commercials do you see with him, on Luca? Um, and then you look at the Celtics, you have, Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown. I mean, these are two of the most wonderful players that I can remember watching in my whole life. I mean, they're fundamentally sound, but they just hoist up 3 pointers like it's going out of style. I mean, so, also Shy Gilchrist Alexander should probably win the MVP this year, the way he's going. But also he plays in OKC, so do we see him as that often? The guy's a wonderful player. Not the greatest 3-point shooter, which is good. I like that. He drives a lot. He'll take a lot of 2 pointers. And your guy right there, Donovan Mitchell in Cleveland, I think is outstanding. And then we've got Jalen Brunson here and Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, Jalen Brunson, you and I had that discussion right now. I think he's the top New York guy, but Towns is gaining in on him. So I don't know, Ken, who out of that bunch, or can you name someone else that the NBA could really say this is our face, this is our face of the league, like they were able to do with Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Kobe Bryant. Who can they say out of, let's say, that bunch or somebody I didn't name?
I don't know because you said SGA and OKC. I don't think being in Oklahoma City is gonna hurt him
Yeah.
because I mean LeBron was in Cleveland for
Yeah.
years and
Yeah.
it didn't really matter.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I out of those guys, I would probably say the most would be Anthony Edwards. Um, but also what keeps happening too is every time we were like, oh, I think this might be the dynasty, the team the next year just can't get it done.
Can't get it done.
Like you look at Denver, and like I don't know, Boston's really good, but like even if they make it, they are a great team fundamentally. Like they do everything right, but none of those guys are like, man, I really like that guy, unless you're a Boston Celtics fan.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
don't know, it seems like people are sick of Jason Tatum. I know I kind of am, and he's really good.
I
Don't
know.
tell that to Celtics
He's
fans,
a great
but
player.
like
Yeah.
he's just
Yeah.
kind of a boring player.
Yeah.
Jaylen Brown too. Like
Yeah.
none of these guys are like um they don't have, I guess, like the charisma. They don't got the Riz. If
Yeah.
we're gonna sound like younger people.
Well, I think you're making a great point because I don't look for any of that these days. But I'm older, right? I put Jason Tatum always right up there in the top five players in the league. The guy's a winner. But I agree with you. Do a lot of the younger kids coming up look for someone like a John Morant, who is a big trash talker as well, and is definitely, and this is no knock on Jason Tatum, but probably they look at him as more stylish, than Tatum. You don't see Tatum talking trash. Neither do you see Brown. Brown just quietly does his. Brown quietly is one of the top 10 players in the league. And so I don't know, man. I think that though style does matter. I want to go back to OKC for a second because you made a great point. I don't think that you have to be a star in a big market in the NBA anymore, really in any league. I think you're still going to get paid somehow. But especially in the NBA, and you look at Giannis in Milwaukee, and I like when guys choose to stay in those markets. I love that Damian Lillard for years stayed in Portland. Um, but I think that, and maybe this will change a little bit with TV. Ken, when was the last time you really got pumped up watching OKC on a national game? Well, I'll tell you, there's probably been a long time because they're not featured on a lot of these national games. There's no rivalry created with, let's say, them and the Lakers. And so I think that's a bad job on some of the networks' part because this is a wonderful team. This team finished first in the West last year, and yeah, they got bumped, I know, in the semifinals, right? But outside of the Cavs, who has the best record this so far already this year? It's OKC. They're a wonderful team and they're fundamentally sound. They're well coached. They've got a couple of not good but great players. And does the league market them? They should because but do they have, as you said, the Riz? I don't know. The one commercial where uh, SGA and Chet Holmgren are singing together was a pretty good commercial. I'm like, I'm in it, but a lot of people might look at that commercial. Who are these two guys? So um, it it's it's going to be interesting. I think you said it at the beginning. Nothing is going to trump the NFL just yet. And the NFL, maybe because of the fantasy leagues, maybe because of the betting that happens, it's people are more all in for different reasons, but I don't think the NFL cares about that, right? I think as long as you're watching and they're making their money, that's what they care about. Last quick thing, and we're going to jump to the NFL. Um, in a regular season game, I know this is on Netflix, so it's special, but it's still a regular season game. they get still arguably probably, you could argue Taylor Swift or whatever, but they get still probably the biggest star of probably, let's say, the last 20 years, right? And Beyonce to come out and do a halftime show on a regular season game. You ain't seeing that in the NBA. You ain't seeing that in Major League Baseball or whatever. Not that there's a halftime in baseball, but how does the NFL pull something like that off? I mean, I don't know. They're just trying to figure out ways they can get eyeballs there, you know?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Because like the NBA could do something like that,
Yeah.
and even like I don't know. I think even with the Christmas games, like it used to be such a big thing, and I saw LeBron had tweeted something about it that like bring back the Christmas uniforms where
Yeah.
they're like a little
Yeah.
special and
He
all
said he
that.
was surprised when he walked in the locker room and they weren't there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the NBA could do a better job of kind of marketing their bigger stars, which
Yeah.
like we've said that a lot with baseball. And I think baseball has done a good job. I mean, Shohei Ohtani is a guy that people know more widespread. Juan Soto is now a lot more of a household name,
Yeah.
probably mostly because of the contract, but also still like he had a great run with the Yankees. Like,
Yeah.
um, if you ask like the casual person on the street, uh, like some of the NBA players under 30, most of them probably wouldn't know who they are.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's what I'm
and
saying.
and
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and I think that's where they can do a better job. Like I think back with last thing I'll say is with the Warriors. Back when they were like really good and I was in Bible school, a buddy of mine's born and raised in San Francisco, huge Warriors fan. They were on every night.
Yeah.
And
No
like
doubt.
the NBA didn't care,
Yeah.
like because they
Yeah.
knew people would watch, and sure enough, they did.
Yeah.
Like we watched it every night.
Yeah.
But like, there isn't a team that'll draw people in. There also really isn't a player. Like I think the next time you'll really see a lot of attention is LeBron's last game
Yeah.
or Steph's last game.
Yeah.
Because like I think the last time I really was like really into like one of those big moments in the NBA was probably when Kobe scored 61 on his last game.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
a lot of the a lot of my peers, like that's the guy they saw growing up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. They just need that guy.
All right. We'll keep the conversation going. Let's jump to the NFL. So I'll do something a little different here for our folks on YouTube. We're going to share. I'll share my screen and pull up Kenny's list here, and we'll share that. And there we go.
Boom.
Oh man, this is funny. So you have a little Christmas theme going here, and let's get. I don't have any major stories. I thought I talked a little bit about Aaron Rodgers at the beginning. Oh, I had Pete Carroll's name here, but we can talk about that later. See how that unfolds. I think I think the Jets or the Bears could do well by hiring a guy like Pete Carroll for a couple of years and having someone learn underneath him and let him change the cultures. But let's go and see. Go ahead and talk us through. This is week 16 now, right? Is it week 16? Yeah, because it's 18.
17. We're heading in, yeah.
Okay. All right. Go ahead and talk us
I think
through.
we're heading into week 17.
Heading in. Okay, so this is
Um
week 16.
all
Okay.
right, so yeah. So we have four more eliminated teams because that's the nature of this time of year. I got the Cardinals, the Cowboys, Saints, and Niners. Not much can be said about these guys. Actually, except for the Niners. I don't think I texted you this one. I might have. Um, do you know over the last 22 years, the 49ers have either made the NFC title game or missed the playoffs? There has not been an
What?
in-between with that.
Not in between. Wow. I was telling this to
So
someone yesterday because is it the Monday night game or the Sunday night game? It's a big game that they didn't flex out. Lions 49ers. That might be Monday night. And I was saying, imagine when they scheduled that at the beginning of the year, they're like, this is gonna be the game of the year right here. But Man, oh man, the Niners. I did not know that is an interesting stat. So there's no in between with them. It's either they miss the playoffs or they get to the conference championship. Wow. Wow. Amazing.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Let's see. Yeah, Lions 49ers is the Monday night game.
Monday night game. Imagine if the 49ers were still in it. That would be all eyeballs would be on that game Monday night for sure.
Yeah. That'd be an interesting one.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. This is I figured because it's Christmas, I would do like Christmas movie comparison, so to speak.
I love it.
Um,
Yeah.
so and I know some people will probably hate the movies I picked where, but I'm just going with whatever. Um, It's a Wonderful Life. I feel like it's a movie that no one really likes, but we still got to talk about it because it's just kind of there. The Dolphins and the Colts, they're still alive for the playoffs, so
Yeah.
I guess we got to keep talking about.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't have much else to say. There's a good chance right now that they will both not be in the playoffs. I have the standings up here. Where do they currently stand? Uh, like Indy is eighth and Miami is ninth. Um, Denver at 9-6. They have a 2 game lead, but also Denver's schedule I think is kind of weird.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, they play the Bengals and the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but also they play the Chiefs weeks 18, and at this point the Chiefs don't have anything to play for. So we'll
Right.
see.
Right.
Um, the Colts are in a weird spot too still. Like I don't know. They're in where you don't want to be, where they're good enough to win a few games, but they're not bad enough to get a good pick. So
Yeah.
if they miss the playoffs, like you're kind of stuck with Anthony Richardson unless you trade up for a pick, or if you go out and trade for any of these guys that might be available,
Yeah.
say like a Kirk Cousins, or if the Steelers are moving on from Russ, something like that. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
all I'll say about them. Next tier, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. It's a solid movie, and but also like I feel like people shade it when maybe they probably shouldn't because it's a better movie than you think, especially when you realize that it was like you're talking like 1960s. But anyway, I had the Commanders, I got the Bengals, and I got the Falcons there. Um, the Commanders will probably make the playoffs. At this point, I'd be a little surprised if they didn't. Um, the Bengals, they have Denver, and then also I believe they finished the year off against the Browns.
Hmm.
So we'll see. Um, that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
And then lastly, the Falcons. They started Michael Penix. Good for them. They might be in a spot where they thought that they started him too late, but I guess we'll see. Um, the next the next level, Charlie Brown. Very solid movie. Um, and it would feel weird if you didn't watch it. That's why like I feel like there's been a little bit more outrage because it's been on Apple TV the last couple of years. Um, so you have the Rams. The Rams will probably make the playoffs at this point. They'll probably win the division. They'll probably end up being the 4 seed. But what a bad 4 seed draw, because that means that they're going to face either um, Minnesota or Detroit, probably Minnesota,
Oof.
which is brutal.
Yeah.
Denver, it's weird to say it'd be weird to not have Denver in there, but at this point, like they're looking at a 10-win season.
Yeah.
They have the Chiefs last week of the year, so that might be an easy win for them. Um, yeah, at this point, it'll be kind of weird. Seattle, I don't know. Seattle's kind of, if Seattle doesn't make the playoffs, it might be a little weird. But
Yeah.
also, it is first year in a new system with a new head coach. And also, it's been a minute. So it's been a minute since they've had a new head. Would be surprised. Okay, well, like they've had a good year,
Yeah.
but it is what it is. And
Yeah.
also, I want to see Baker Mayfield in the playoffs again.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I feel like he's done a lot of great things, and he deserves to get another shot there.
I think so.
Um, Next tier is Elf. I think a very solid movie. Um, Maybe not a lot of people's favorite movie, but also like there's not a ton of people that have negative things to say about it. The
Hmm.
Steelers. Now, if we're including yesterday, I feel like this is a good spot for them. I think they're really good, and it looks like their ceiling might be winning one playoff game. Um, they have lost control of their destiny a little bit because it looks like Denver will, or Baltimore will probably overtake the division.
Hmm.
But still, you end up in the five spots. You're probably going to be facing, uh, I don't know, where would they end up with? Houston? Like
Hmm.
that's a winnable game. Speaking
Yeah.
of Houston, they're right next to them.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, Baltimore gave them a nice shellacking. I mean, it's rare that you see a 31-2 game.
Ah,
Really, it's rare that you see someone score 2 points in an NFL game. But
CJ
um,
Stroud looks lost to me, Ken.
yeah,
He really does.
yeah, and also losing Nico Collins again for the year is going to be
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
Uh, so I don't know. We'll see what happens with them. Um, the Chargers, I think the Chargers are good. I think they have a
Mhm.
great head coach.
Yeah.
Um, but their offense doesn't seem like I feel like their offense should be better than it is. But they have a great defense, and especially in the playoffs, like that's what you want. They have the number one scoring defense. I think they'll probably win a playoff game. But also, once again, they're going to be kind of fighting Pittsburgh for that spot. Right now, as it would stand, they'd be facing off in Baltimore to start off the playoffs. That's a tough first round draw.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, Green Bay. Uh, Green Bay is the best third place team easily in the NFL.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
and they also are kind of it's weird what'll end up kind of making a difference, I think, in these playoffs is like Green Bay right now would be facing they would be going to LA to face the Rams. And then probably facing Philly in the next round,
Hmm.
which they did Philly. Granted, it was week one, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. They seem like a good story. I don't know if they're necessarily a top team,
Yeah.
which is why I have them there. So the top six teams,
Ken,
which
before you
like
move,
if I had done this,
can I say this real quick? I'm sorry.
yeah.
The I aside from Saquon with the Eagles and Derrick Henry with Baltimore, because those two have had just phenomenal years, right? MVP caliber years. The guy who doesn't get talked about, who has made such a difference in Green Bay, is Josh Jacobs. This guy has been unbelievable. I mean, for Jordan Love, as a still developing young NFL quarterback, to be able to hand the ball to him or throw the outs to him, he's just been outstanding. But, when he was with the Raiders, you knew he was real good. But then you also knew the Raiders weren't going to keep him, which I don't know why the Raiders just, forget it. That's why they're in that bottom tier. But he has just but he doesn't get talked about enough. But if you watch, Packers have been on TV a lot of late, and they're going to be on TV again. We'll get to that. This guy just every game he just comes up with these big plays, and he So anyway, I just wanted to shout that out.
Oh yeah. He's been really good. And also I think a lot of credit has to go to Matt LaFleur.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely,
because
absolutely.
like Aaron Rodgers really I mean I know there's the injury and everything like that, but they got off of him and they got a new quarterback and it looks like for the third time now they have a franchise quarterback with really no like in between weirdness, which like you
Yeah,
never see that.
yeah, yeah.
Um Last year I put Home Alone. I think it's a solid movie. I think most of people would like it. I don't really once again, I don't really know of anybody that like hates Home Alone. So I put it up there. The Chiefs. Now, um, if we're talking Kansas City, um, they have an opportunity now to do something that only one other team has done, and that's win 16 regular season games. Which can be good and bad.
Yeah.
I think at this point you'll probably rest everyone, which means that you're probably going about 3 weeks without playing,
Yeah.
which like that can be once again good or bad. Uh,
Yeah.
Sometimes teams, but I think for the Chiefs, it's not going to affect them because they are the Chiefs. They'll probably end up finishing the year being one of four teams to not score 30 plus points, but yet still win 16 games.
I think
Now,
Andy Reid will know exactly what to do with them. I think he's such a Hall of Fame coach. He's going to know exactly how much is too much and how much is enough rest for them. They have some time off now in between, right? From yesterday's
yeah,
game till the following week. So, um, yeah, it's gonna be fun to see what happens with the Chiefs. It really is. I'm looking forward to this.
I will point this out though, because of course, they might be the anomaly to this. But if they win 16 regular season games, they tie the NFL record.
Right?
Um, Team with the most wins in the NFL currently did not win the Super Bowl. In Major League Baseball, the team with the most regular season wins did not win the World Series. In the NHL, the team with the most regular season wins did not win the Stanley Cup. And in
Right.
the NBA, the team
Yeah,
with the most wins ever in a regular season did not win the NBA Finals.
that's true. Yeah.
So
Wow.
it's to me one of the weirder things in sports,
Yeah.
but it could also happen. But also, there's never been a three-peater, and
Right.
maybe we'll actually see that. So,
All the great teams.
um,
Isn't that amazing? All those great Steeler teams, Dolphin teams, Packer teams, Dallas teams. It's the May 49ers. Any Super Bowl kind of dynasty that you can name, none of them have ever won three in a row. That's just amazing. Imagine if the Chiefs do that.
yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of like consecutive Super Bowls, the Bills. I
Yeah.
think the Bills are probably the biggest competition for Kansas City.
Yeah.
Um, if Kansas City is rooting for it, they're really, really hoping that Cincy gets in because Cincinnati would have to go to Buffalo, and yeah, that wouldn't be fun.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Uh, but also because I think out of all the teams, you're probably the most scared because right now Buffalo's the only reason why we're not talking about the Chiefs going undefeated. Uh, and Josh Allen probably still front runner for MVP. We'll see. I
Hmm.
know injury considerations and all that might be a factor, but
Yeah.
we'll see there. Detroit, I think one of the biggest stories with Detroit is can they continue to maintain their defense with all the injuries they've
Yeah.
accrued?
Yep.
Um, Also, Ben Johnson, it's going to become a louder story, especially after week 18 and we see a few more teams fire their head coaches.
Yeah.
He's going to be the guy that people go after the most.
Yeah.
And like, is he going to stay focused enough to try to get the Lions to the Super Bowl? Which to me would be a bigger legacy move than revitalizing Chicago or
Yeah.
wherever he ends up. Because Chicago does make sense for him. Um, Honestly, part of me would say the Jets, but I don't know. He needs a place. He needs like a young quarterback type of spot. I think Chicago to me seems like the best fit, but
Yeah.
also there might be like a random head coaching job, like there always is. Like no one was expecting Seattle to fire Pete Carroll out of nowhere,
Yeah.
uh,
Surprising.
or
Yeah.
Tennessee to fire Mike Vrabel, who was
Yeah.
another guy that would make a lot of sense in a lot of places. Next, Minnesota. Minnesota's good. Sam Darnold continues to just like defy the odds.
Yeah.
And once again, I just think, man, if that guy makes a Super Bowl, it's going to be very interesting. Uh,
Yeah.
but also, it'll be very interesting for them because what do you do? You weren't expected to be this good, and I think at this point, you franchise tag Sam Darnold, and then I don't know, you kind of hold and wait and see, and then if he has another good year, you trade JJ McCarthy. I don't know. It'll be interesting.
It will.
Um, the Eagles are also in a very interesting spot because right now, as far as their playoff positioning, they're kind of set. They still could get the one seed, so getting that bye, but also they could be a bigger factor than we think in the race to the bottom. They
Mm,
play the Giants the last week of the season,
ugh.
and the Eagles could have nothing to play for.
Yeah.
So what if the Eagles tank that game and try to give it to the
Yeah.
Giants?
Well,
That would knock the Giants probably out of the top five of the NFL draft, where they right now they hold the cards for that one spot.
yeah.
And the Eagles could sabotage the Giants in that way so that the Giants don't get Shadur Sanders or Cam Wise or whoever.
I think the Eagles
Um,
will play hard. No matter who they put in, I think they'll play hard.
yeah, I hope the Giants don't though. So anyway, the Ravens and last team on this tier, um, they showed that they're really good yesterday. I think like that and then their early season win against Buffalo were like the only times where they looked like the unstoppable team they could be. But I feel like that's going to be that's more of a preview for the playoffs because the running game is still tremendous and supreme. And I think something that continues to get overlooked is how good of a thrower of the football Lamar Jackson has become.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know when he first started, he was not that good, but he's become a lot better.
Yeah.
And he's over 40 touchdowns, I believe now. So,
Dangerous team,
yeah.
man. Yeah. Especially if they play like they did yesterday. Just on a side note, I'm sure somebody else has probably said this, but if you, I don't know why Lamar, maybe it's a warm thing, maybe it's a comfort thing. You notice he's wearing the full thing over his head and everything like that. And he was even doing that in the press conference, but he looks like Frozone from The Incredibles with his thing over his head. Um, but man, oh man, is he a great player. If you haven't seen that run he made yesterday, how he just outran everybody once he got into the open, made one or two moves, and it just got into the open. I think was it Noah Eagle calling that game? He said that averaged out to 21 miles an hour that he was running. I mean, it's just I guess we're gonna figure out some new superlatives, you know. Um Kenny, this is great as always. What a great visual. We'll post this out there. I love that you changed it up to the holiday movies. I think that's awesome. My last quick question for you now, with some teams added to the eliminated list, who is the most disappointing now? You've got the Cowboys added to that list. Um, I stay with the Jets and the Browns, I think, are right there as the two most disappointing teams in the league this year. Do you have any change on now that you've added four more teams there? Five more teams you added, I think. Four or five.
Let's see. It's like the Cowboys, I low key kind of called.
Yeah,
So I'm not that disappointed in them. Um, I don't know. The Bears is slightly disappointing, but I don't think they're that disappointing. I
right.
think the 49ers are definitely up there.
Yeah,
Um, I would say 49ers, Jags, Jets would probably be like top three for me.
yeah. I'm with you. I just when McCaffrey, I knew last year they had depended on him so much since they got him in that big trade, right? And he was such a big part of their offense and their team that when he wasn't healthy, and then when he came back, got hurt again, that was where I said, and the 49 had a lot more injuries than just him, but and injuries is not an excuse, right? You see some of these teams still playing at a high level, the Lions, to name a few, but he was such a big part of their offense. And Brock Purdy, while he's very good, I just didn't think that he could overcome, what's happening. I'll give you a quick example. I think if Derrick Henry, hopefully he doesn't, but if he was to get hurt, he never gets hurt. But if he was to get hurt, I think Lamar Jackson could overcome that, and the Ravens could overcome that. I just didn't think that from Brock Purdy just yet. Not saying that he's not an excellent quarterback. All right. Who or what are you watching? There's a game on tonight. Seattle at the Bears. Are you going to watch any of that tonight?
Nah.
Okay. There's three games on Saturday, but I think two of them are very interesting, and I was chomping at the bit. That Denver at Cincinnati, that I think that's Denver's playoff game right there. And Cincy's, because Cincy gets Cleveland the following week, and you said it, Denver gets Kansas City, they'll probably dial back, or maybe they're going to go for that 16th win. So that's one that I'm sure I'm going to check in on. I have Arizona at the Rams. nothing for Arizona, but a big game for the Rams, obviously. Any interest in any of those games?
I do think Denver versus Cincinnati is basically for that last wild card spot.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I mean, I think that there might be a world where both can get in, but also Denver hasn't won 10 games since they won the Super Bowl.
yeah. Wow,
And so that would be big for them.
it would be. Absolutely. Absolutely. On Sunday, and because of all these games on Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, there's not a ton of games on Sunday. You've got Carolina at Tampa Bay. Obviously, not a big game for Carolina, but they played very well over the last few weeks. But a huge game for Tampa Bay. And then at 1 o'clock, also, actually, that might be 4 o'clock. You have Miami at Cleveland. I think it's still 1 o'clock. Not a big
Four
game.
o'clock.
Is it 4 o'clock? Yeah. So
Yeah.
big game for Miami, not so much for the Browns. Any interest in those two?
Um, the Browns might be on. It'll be interesting because Tua doesn't really do well in the cold.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but yeah, I don't know. The big game that could have been, would have been, is Dallas at Philly.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but that's
No,
not a big game
no,
anymore.
it's not. Not even for Philly, it's not a big game. But the big one that I'm probably gonna relax and tune into will be Green Bay at Minnesota.
Yeah.
That that's the
Uh,
that's the game of the weekend, I think, and I think it'll a lot to it. Um, all right, good job as always. I'm going to skip the free agents here for a second. If we have time, we can come back to that because I wanted to devote a couple of minutes to Ricky Henderson here. You and I sent some texts back and forth. And, it's unfortunate, Ricky Henderson, I mean, more than unfortunate, just terrible that he passed away at the age 65 from pneumonia, that's scary, to think about that. I know I've had pneumonia before, not in a long, long time, but scary to think that a relatively healthy 68. We don't know. Maybe he had some other underlying issues, but I mean, we saw him recently at a few things, like the last game that the A's played in Oakland. He was at that. He looked great. I think it was his daughter threw out the first pitch to him. Um, but I've got some numbers here, and I just want to hear your thoughts because I saw more of Ricky than you did, but you remember him well as well. He played a long time. I think he played 25 years. He was kind of ageless, although I thought he had lost it a little bit. Um, but anyway, Ricky was a 10-time All-Star, Hall of Fame player. He was the MVP in 1990. He finished in the top three a couple other times. That his MVP year. He had 28 homers, 61 RBIs. He batted 325, but had a 439 on base percentage. And he had 65 steals that year. So it wasn't his best steal year, but he still, that's a lot. He had, I think you sent me this. He had 3 years with over 100 steals. 3 years with 100 or more steals. I mean, that's just amazing. Kenny, did you know this? He had 7 years with over 100 walks. So the guy had a great eye at the plate. I mean, he always got on base. Um, he's the all-time leader still in runs scored with 2,295 runs scored. He's of course the all-time leader in steals with 1,406. When he retired, he was the all-time leader in walks. Barry Bonds, past that. Couple of other seasons I just want to highlight, and then I want to hear your thoughts. I sent you this. The 1990, the one full season he spent with the Mets. Now listen, he had no use for Bobby Valentine, and Bobby Valentine had no use for him. Otherwise, he would have probably finished his career with the Mets. But Bobby Valentine that next year couldn't wait to get rid of him because he started off really slow, and the Mets I think shipped him to Seattle. But the 1999 season, he's 40 years old, Ken. 12 homers, 42 RBIs. He had 37 steals. He batted 315 that year. He played almost every game, and he batted 315, and he had a 423 on base percentage. The guy was on base like all the time at 40 years old, and he was a menace. He was like the perfect player for that team. They had a lot of veterans. That's the team that still had John Olerud and Todd Zeile and Mike Piazza, of course, was the star. But Bobby Bonilla was back on that team, and him and Bobby Bonilla, the famous story of them playing cards, because you know why him and Bobby Valentine didn't get along. I don't know if you remember this. Valentine used to take him out for defense. You know, he put in Jay Payton or somebody like that, and Henderson was livid at that. Now he had lost a step or two at 40 years old, but he was still pretty good. He was never a great outfielder, but he was always very good. You know, and he hated that Valentine. So that game, Valentine took him out for defense late in the game. And he's like, "Are you nuts? You taking me out in Game 6 of the championship series for defense?" You know. And so that's why he went to the clubhouse, and him and Bonilla hated Bobby V as well. But 1985 with the Yankees, Ken, you know, that was the first time he got traded. If there's one criticism, I think he played for 9 teams, and he played with Oakland like 3 or 4 different times. He went back and forth to Oakland. 1985 with the Yankees. I thought was his best season with the Yankees. He had 24 homers, 72 RBIs. He had 80 stolen bases. He batted 314. He had a 420 on base percentage. And he led the league with 146 runs scored. I mean, that's those teams for those 5, 6 years that he was there with Don Mattingly and Dave Winfield. Those teams can score, man. That Yankee team just never had pitching. You know, they never could get pitching. They would sign guys that were just terrible, you know? And that was the only reason why they didn't win or they didn't even get to the playoffs in any of those years that he was there. But Ricky Henderson was one of the first guys I saw kind of showboated a little bit. Remember if he hit a home run, you know, he'd do that little dance around first base before he went around first base. And when got his 3,000th hit with the Padres, it was a home run, so he slides into home plate. You know, he was one of a kind, just a fundamentally sound, outstanding player. And anxious to hear your thoughts on the passing of Ricky Henderson.
Number one, it was really shocking.
It really
Because when
was.
you text it was like, wow. And then also it was kind of weird because like none of the outlets were really like confirming it right away,
It took a
which to me was
while,
kind of bizarre.
yeah. It took several
Um,
hours, yeah, yeah,
which usually you don't see that in today's game. I think that's part of that is because it was so out of nowhere.
yeah.
Um, but I have a few more Ricky Henderson stats that are just
Yeah,
like absolutely incredible.
yeah,
So first, 50 steals is hard to get. I think I forgot I counted. I think it's like 20 or something like that in was it seven? There aren't that many in this decade, which
yeah,
like we're just about halfway through the decade. And I know 2020 doesn't really count, but um so 50 steals in a season is incredible. Like Shohei Ohtani did it and it was a big deal. Um you would have to steal 50 bases 28 years in a row in order to still not pass Ricky Henderson in terms of stolen bases.
that is amazing.
Um
Yeah.
he the gap between him and Lou Brock, who is still second all time,
Yes.
is the same gap between Lou Brock and Jimmy Rollins. Jimmy Rollins is 46th all time in career stolen bases.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah.
Um, since he retired, roughly there's about 18 players that have had a 60 steal season. He retired back in 2004, I think it was.
Yeah.
He had 10 seasons himself of 60 steals. Um, and then you had said the three times he logged at least 100 or more.
Yeah.
Um, since he retired, the person that came the closest to him is actually your boy Jose Reyes in 2007 when he stole 78.
Wow.
Um, now,
Yeah.
some of the steal numbers might be slightly inflated over these next several years because of the bigger bases and the
Yeah. Yeah.
disengagement rules, but still, like he is one of one when it comes to um, being like the best leadoff hitter in baseball history.
Yeah.
Like you could go like people always say like creating the most ideal lineup. If you were looking at who do I want to be my leadoff guy, Ricky Henderson's got to be your answer. He gets
Okay.
on base better than anybody else.
Yeah.
He steals better than anybody else, and
Yeah.
he scores more than anybody else.
Yeah.
Um, he truly was a great player,
Yeah.
and it's sad that he won't be around. And I'm glad that they were able to like he was able to have that moment on the last day or the last game in Oakland.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
good for the A's for making that happen.
He was such a character too. I remember when they would interview him after the game, and the man came, and he's still even at 40 years old, was still referring to himself in the third person. He's, he's saying, Ricky don't need to be being taken out for defense late in the game because Ricky could still get you know he's talking about himself. He was a character, but what a wonderful player. Certainly going to be missed. Um, I'll just very quickly just hit you with these names that are still free agents that I'm surprised at. We talked about Pete, Alonso. I'm hoping that leads back to the Mets. So how about if I say these names real quick and first team comes to your mind where they're going, where you think they're going? All
All
right.
right,
Teoscar Hernandez.
LA. I think he's staying with the
That's his
Dodgers.
Dodgers. Okay. Corbin Burns.
I think I still might go Boston.
Boston. Oh boy. If he goes to Boston, Kenny, that's your competition right there.
Yeah.
The Red Sox will be your competition. Alex Bregman.
Ooh. I don't think he's going back to Houston.
No.
Uh,
The owner just about said so, the other day.
oh man, I don't want to say the Yankees, but maybe the Yankees.
Okay. All right. That wouldn't be bad, actually. I don't know why you say, or maybe Yankees, just because he played with your hated Astros. Tanner Scott.
Well, I don't,
Oh no,
I'm
go
not
ahead.
even bothered that much by that. I just worry. I just worry about this team getting too old at the same time.
Okay.
Like, I don't want to give
Legit.
Alex Bregman a 7-year contract.
That's legit. Okay. All right. Tanner Scott. He's been the best lefty reliever, even better than Josh Hader the last few years. Where's he going?
Not Cleveland. He's going to a contender. I feel like that's, I don't know, maybe the Giants.
Okay. Okay. And I got a real tough one for you. Last one. I'm sure I probably missed some other names that are out there, but this guy's just so interesting to me, and that's Gleyber Torres.
Washington.
You think he's going to Washington? Okay. All right. I had someone tell me yesterday that they think he might be headed back to the Yankees. I mean, why not? But I think the Yankees are done with him. I really do. I think the Yankees are just they're not hustling at times and stuff like that. Unless he comes back and says I'll do a 1 year deal, something like that. He's still young enough to do that, but I think the Yankees are done with him. So um, did we say Pete? Who did you say Pete was going to? Back to the Mets?
I think Pete's back to the Mets.
Back
Yeah.
to the Mets. Okay. All right. All right. All right, cool. I'm sure we'll have more to talk about next week. You ready for some inspiration?
Yeah.
And I forgot to print it out, so I'll just sum up. Michael Penix Jr. is my inspiration this week, and we might have used him last year when he was going to the championship game. And that is, he's been a strong, outspoken Christian for a long time. I'm going to read this real quick. Um, this was last year when he was one win away from from becoming a national champion, and they got spanked in the national championship game by Michigan, as you might remember. But he says Penix played at Indiana where he suffered. I remember he was a transfer, but he did it the different way, right? Because he got hurt, where he suffered four different season-ending injuries and exited the Hoosiers program embarrassed and discouraged. The trials Penix faced during his first four seasons were overwhelming. At one point, he even contemplated retiring from the sport altogether. He was in desperate need of strength, purpose, and support. He found it through his faith. There were times when I'd wake up the day of the game, and I'd wait until my roommates leave, and I'd just lie on the floor and I'd just cry out to God, just praying that He'd protect me that day. Um, Everything that I've accomplished to this day, it came with a lot of heartbreak and a lot of tears. Nothing was going to be easy to be great. I'm more than just a football player, and deep down inside, as a person, I'm a guy that's never going to quit. His resiliency paid off handsomely. As you know, he played for Washington just that 1 year, but he was a Heisman Trophy runner-up. Just a phenomenal year, 35 touchdown passes. It'd be easy for the talented left-hander to lose sight of his priorities amid all his success, but the Christian quarterback has maintained steady humility through it all, taking every opportunity to praise God when in the spotlight. I've just got to give credit to the man upstairs and thank God for everything he put me through and allowing me to get to the spot that I am today. And that was after they defeated Oregon, which was probably in regular season last year, his signature moment. Um, but I think his signature moment was more against Texas. That's when he threw 430. He threw for 430 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he helped them beat Texas to get to the national championship game. But he refused any sort of credit. He said that all of everything goes to God, all honor and glory. And guess what he said after he was named a starter? And he had a pretty good game against the Giants and got a win for Falcons, which was again a strange move this time of year, but looks like they've put that team in his hands. He says all honor and glory to God. So Michael Penix Jr., a guy who's overcome a lot of obstacles and just continues to lean on God, he is my inspiration this week.
Wow, that's good. And I do hope that they even if they don't make the playoffs, I do hope well for him.
Yeah,
It'll be weird to see what they do with Kirk Cousins, but
yeah,
hey, I guess they knew what they were doing. So,
yeah, yeah.
um, so mine isn't really like a faith-based inspiration. It's just kind of a cool reel I saw. Because it's spirit of Christmas.
Right.
This lady, it was featured on the NFL's page. This lady had gotten a jersey from her daughter, son, whoever. And that was how they announced to her that in 2025 she's going to be a grandma. So they
I
got
think
her
I
a
saw
jersey that
that.
said grandma.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, which that's fun.
That was awesome.
Um,
Yeah,
so I
yeah,
mean, it's always fun to get like gifts like that and see like that type of reaction. So
yeah,
if you haven't seen it, check out like the NFL's page or check out I think the Eagles page too.
yeah, yeah. I think I saw that. That was great. That was great. Awesome. All right, man. And as the season winds down here, so does your wife's time start to wind down, and soon a dad of two more. So we'll start to weave that into the conversations here, because at some point we are going to pause, folks. We are going to pause for a bit because my son here is going to need a break to be a dad to not two but four, and so exciting stuff there. Um, so anyway, Ken, lots to talk about next week. You ready to take us home?
Yeah, that does make me think maybe we should do a twin segment, our favorite twin athletes. I don't know.
There you go.
But we'll
Yeah.
figure that out.
I don't know.
In
Are
the
there many
meantime,
twin athletes? Are there many? I don't. Tom and Dick Van Arsdale. They're before your time. I think
uh
one of them died recently. Unfortunately, Dick Van Arsdale passed away recently. They were both very good basketball. Dick Van Arsdale was
I
very
had I had a few here. Markeith Marcus Morris,
right. Okay, got them.
Rondé and Tiki Barber.
Oh, I forgot about them.
What was the other one that really
Oh, the two
popped out?
guys on the broadcast yesterday.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Well, Courtney, aren't they twins?
I
Jason
think
McCoy?
so.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't
Um,
know.
Brooke and Robin Lopez.
Okay. So we got some that we can talk about. Okay. All right. All right. That sounds good. Maybe we'll weave that in next week. Awesome.
Yeah,
All right. All right. For now, well, and Brooke, it's got to be Brooke on that one. I mean, there's no, Robin was pretty good defensively, but Brooke now his second half of his career he's been a 3-point shooter. So and he won that championship with the Bucks. So he's
yeah.
yeah. All right, son, take us home,
Alrighty, this is Kenny Squared N
Kenny.
with Sports on the Positive Tip. We'll see you guys next time.